All right, guys, so welcome to the Auddy Hotties podcast. We're back. This time, since it's February, we are talking about love and autism and ADHD and how they combine in good and not so good ways.
The real ways.
The real ways, the many varied ways.
All the ways.
Yes. Hottie. Welcome to Auddy Hotties.
Just two friends talking joy and life.
Okay, let's get started. Hi, guys. So today we are talking about love and neurodiversity for our lovely week of love and friendship and whatever else.
Yes.
Valentines, Galentines, all
Day
that
of
good
love,
stuff.
Cupid, arrows,
Cupid arrows,
sweet
yeah.
tarts, or
Sweet
like
tarts. Yes, heart-shaped everything, candy.
heart-shaped everything, pink.
Pink and red.
All the things.
Yeah. Anyways, so this episode is going to be all about that and some of our experience and then a lot of listener stories and different experiences. So we'll get started.
Sounds good.
I wanted to start with a little catch up because it's relevant that I am moving in with my girlfriend. We've been together for almost 2 years. It'll March 10th, so it'll be 2 years like right after we move in together, which is really fun.
Cute little celebration.
Yeah,
Way
exactly.
of honoring.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're super excited about that. A little nervous about all the like small parts of it, but the benefit of waiting like so long and knowing each other well is that we kind of know each other's quirks with neurodiversity and like where we struggle and keep up. And in my marriage in the past, it was hard to balance like his cleanliness habits with my cleanliness habits.
Yeah.
So now I feel like I have much more perspective on that.
For sure.
And we brought my kitty in today for our love episode.
The
He's
small tiger.
a small tiger. He's a 14-pound black tabby cat with long hair. He's a little
Like a
lover.
big belly.
Belly.
Well, actually, it's just fur.
It's just fur.
But you're beautiful as you are.
He's Belmont. He's a dapper gentleman with a bow tie.
So freaking
Anyways,
cute.
he's exploring the basement right now, but he's here to join us today for all the loves.
All the loves.
Yeah.
What are you most excited for moving in with Lauren?
I think like finding a new rhythm together. Like it's been hard because we only live a mile apart.
I know.
Which almost makes it worse because like last night we went to IKEA and then we needed to go to her house to drop off the IKEA stuff, but my car was at my house. And so we've just been constantly doing this battle of like, okay, we'll go to your house, but then that means we have to leave again and go to take me back to my house. Because it's too far to walk in the dark, but
right.
like
It's like all a constant rotating plan. So I feel like it'll bring a lot more peace and less like detail orientation to your everyday.
Yeah. And we like constantly miss each other when we like have to leave like that too. Like she'll drop me off and then it's like, oh, I wish you were here like going to bed with me or like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very sweet. And I know that you guys are merging all of your pets.
Yep, we're merging 3 different cats together, 2 from her and 1 from me, and then my dog also.
Yeah.
And the dog has been around the cats, but of course the cats haven't been around each other, so that's a whole nother world. And this is so random, but I went to a friend's speed dating thing, and of course there's a ton of like neurodiverse people there, and like it was all queer people also. And literally like 85% of the people there had cats.
Oh my God.
I was like, welcome
to
to queer world.
Welcome to
cats.
It's a safe space.
Yeah, this is a common problem, having to combine cats.
Totally. I wonder how often that happens where like partners try to move in, but like the cat situation makes it so much more difficult.
Yeah, and
So funny.
fortunately we have great communication and we've really talked about like what are the situations that are tenable and untenable, and like we're like, okay, well, neither of us is giving up any pets for sure. So we're like, if they're starting a peeing match or something, we're gonna be like, can't do it.
Can't do it.
Or if it's just like, a little discomfort, then that's okay.
Can deal with the discomfort.
Yeah, definitely.
Cats are so funny. They're so like independent, territorial.
Yeah. One of my friends the other day, I can't remember who it was, but they were like, Was it you? No, I don't know. Anyways,
It could have been
I
me.
can't remember things that were like social things ever.
Was it that cats are autistic and dogs are ADHD?
No,
Okay.
it was specific to Monty, my cat.
Oh, okay.
But somebody was like, I think that your cat is non-binary.
Oh, that's so funny.
They're like, he's not a boy. He's not a girl. He's a little non-binary
I would
kitty.
say so.
Right?
They're definitely gender bending. Yes,
Yeah.
I would say so. Monty, for sure.
Yeah. So funny. Anyways, besides that update, is there anything you wanted to update on?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool.
Um,
I wanted to start then with
yeah.
would you rather?
Okay.
So you don't get to see this one
Okay, I'm not
beforehand.
looking.
Okay, but would you rather go on a date to a restaurant that has fluorescent lights
Oh.
or to a restaurant with 5 different TVs playing different things?
Oh no.
You only get one or the other, and it's Valentine's Day.
And it's Valentine's Day? Like that would be the day of the date?
Just because of where we're at with
Oh
the episode.
no. Because you would have to think of like what would be playing on the TV? Like, would it be
Mhm.
sports? Would the volume be on?
And they're all different, so who knows?
Oh my gosh. Both sound like a nightmare. Oh wow. And I have to say, like, yes, I've been in restaurants with like the multiple TVs, not
Mhm.
all like playing their sound at the same time, but like, have I ever been to a restaurant with fluorescent lights? I don't think so. That sounds terrible, but I work in fluorescent lights, so
Mm.
maybe more tolerable.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I don't
I
know.
think either way I would be like way more self-conscious because either the light would make me like, oh, don't look at me.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Or the TVs would make me like really like ADHD, like looking around and be like, whoa, stop acting like a weird.
What's going
Pay attention to what they're saying. Pay attention to what they're
on?
saying.
Yeah. I would definitely say the TVs would be way more distracting and
Yeah.
just like, what's going on that TV and then what's going on this TV. And if the noise, like if the sound was on, I would be super overstimulated.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of one of my biggest um
Triggers out in the world.
yes, because I definitely have some sort of auditory processing going on,
Mm.
auditory processing disorder. Haven't been formally diagnosed, but after like studying audiology and knowing like listening versus listening comprehension, hearing versus listening, I guess is the word.
Hmm.
You want to
Hmm.
come up? I was talking to the cat earlier.
Yeah, she
It was pretty amazing.
say hi.
Oh
Oh,
my
it gives you a
gosh, this is
moment. He's coming up to like the look in the camera on the table. Oh, hello. Welcome to News 9 and Kitty
What is
Kitty.com.
happening? Wow, he's looking at our porn lights. We literally have like two lights
The
on
big
our
umbrella
phone.
lights. When people walk into my basement, I have to tell them like, I'm not filming a porno. I have a podcast.
Podcast, not porno.
Yeah. Which if you'll notice, I did finally get rid of the mattress that I've had down
One less thing.
one less creepy thing to put in here. Yeah. Anyways, that was a horrible options, but that's the point of Would You Rather, right?
It's true. I think I would choose the fluorescent lights.
Yeah.
I think I would mostly because I can accommodate that with my glasses and I can't accommodate my distracting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's totally fair.
good would you rather? What would you choose in the end?
I think probably the fluorescent lights also.
Yeah.
Even though I'd be pretty like
You'd be like,
self-conscious, I'd
oh,
be like trying to hide.
me.
Yeah, I'd be like, hiding.
Don't perceive me.
Yeah. Yeah, same thing. I'd be super distracted with the other one.
Yeah.
So. And that would make me probably not have a second date.
You never know.
Yeah.
Someone might really love that about you.
Who knows?
You never know.
Yeah. So I was gonna go through some Reddit stories today to see kind of what other people's experiences with different situations with love. I know on Reddit there's a lot of people like debating the merits of relationships or not relationships for
Mhm.
people with neurodivergence. So we've got a little bit of that, but kind of just some experiences, and then we'll end with some kind of nice stories at the end.
Love it.
Yeah. So this one is talking about like combinations of neurodiversity, which is really interesting to me because my past relationship with my husband was that he had ADHD really strongly and just like difficulty with a lot of like controlling time and what we're, working on in the house and keeping up with everything in life, that kind of thing. And I struggle a lot with my autism if people aren't like cleanly and like things are organized because it really throws me off if my environment is crazy.
Yeah.
So that really didn't like mix very well for the two of us, even though we both understood that we had
Yeah,
neurodiversities.
sure. Was it
And
something that you guys like talked about a lot and tried to work through?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I also felt like sometimes you would use it a little bit as a crutch of like, oh well, I have ADHD, so I can't do that or I can't manage that. And I would try
Yeah,
to
that's
help with
really
like,
hard.
let's get some structures. Like I get that it's hard, but let's find like ways to work around it,
Right.
that kind of thing. Because that's what I have to do for myself a lot. Is like,
Yeah,
okay, well this way isn't gonna work, but I'm gonna find an alternative, like making a
sure.
list or whatever.
Yeah. But at
Um,
the end of the day, I mean, he needed to figure out how to navigate it for himself.
yeah,
Yeah,
and wasn't really at that point in life to do it. So
sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Because that intrinsic motivation, I feel like, is huge with
Mhm.
ADHD and task and,
Yeah.
task initiation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But now Laura and I's mix is almost identical with each other.
Hmm.
We're both autistic and ADHD, and we both have very similar, like our autism kind of like wins out over the ADHD in a lot of things.
Hmm.
And that's actually worked really well because we both are stressed by the same thing.
Yeah,
And so we both kind of manage life in the same way,
sure.
which has worked really nicely.
That is, yeah. Good compatibility.
Yeah. Um, So some of these ones that I was looking at was this one was talking about they're dating an autistic man that stims openly a lot more than them and is helping them like open up to feel more comfortable stimming around him and around others in general. Because they had learned to shut down most of the stimming behaviors as a kid. And then it also says he also doesn't seem overwhelmed by my strong emotions at all. He continues to communicate with me kindly and logically when I'm upset, and it feels really easy to be myself around him. I didn't realize how much I was shutting down my real personality to suit the needs of my partners in past relationships. And I could feel like 100% certain that everything he says to me is as close to true as he can express it. I thought that was really beautiful.
That's
Like,
really sweet. It's like
yeah,
a really safe relationship to be in.
yeah. So it's really cool to be in one like with someone else that is more comfortable than you and like
Hmm.
help you kind of come out of that shell too. And I
For
feel like that's true
sure.
with friendships too. Like
I
being around somebody
agree.
that is like open and fine with it
Yeah.
like helps a lot.
No, I completely agree.
And then this one's really interesting. This is from Autism and Relationships. It says, I think I was very lucky that my first and so far only boyfriend, who I met randomly online, happened to have a dad who was autistic. That meant he already knew common autistic traits and how they manifested, and he recognized that my quirks that would probably annoy others or scare them off for what they were.
I feel like the more someone can access information, it's more, I don't know if the word is palatable, but it's just like it's easier to see how someone is and
Hmm.
why, and gives like a very gracious context, I
Yeah.
think, for why someone is the way that they are, the way that
The way that
they
he
is.
is. Yeah.
But
I think that's definitely true of like some of the benefits of therapy too. And like also
mhm.
I love to read books about different things
Yeah.
going on and like the book that's Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Yeah, I haven't read
Emotions.
that one,
You haven't read it
but
yet? Oh,
I
it's
haven't.
good. It's good.
I have it on my bookshelf.
Cool.
I have a million books on my bookshelf that are to be read.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that was it's really good because it also makes you think about relationships too. Like it helped
Yeah.
me work through some past relationship stuff.
Yeah.
But it like you said, it is that framework of like understanding and being like, okay, I see where this is coming from now. And even though that doesn't fix the problem or like help me communicate to it, it does help me understand and therefore I can like know where to work from.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm on this path of understanding, like, kind of what you were saying earlier of like, this is who I am. It's not an excuse for my behavior. However, it gives context and a place to
Mhm.
work from. I think that was put really beautifully. So gaining information about how to kind of work around different neuro I never know what fucking word to say, whether it's like neurodiversities, neurodivergences, the neurospiciness of our world.
Yes.
Because there are so many different, and humans are complex, so it
Mhm.
all manifests differently. And I think that as more and more people, you know, find out more about who they are through therapy or through that like introspective work,
Mhm.
um, I think that's also part of the context is
Yeah.
people understanding their functioning, their limitations, their beauty,
Mhm.
their the way that they show up in society, how to take care of themselves. I think that, there's something to be said for being in relation with other people as you kind of are on that path. But I think that
Mhm.
there's also something to be said about the work that you're doing on your own before like diving into like really deep relationships. I don't know. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And like that helps you going forward, entering into a new relationship. Because
Yeah.
not only do you have to know about them, you need to know about yourself
Yes.
before that so that you have your own context going into things. Because
Totally.
context was the perfect word for
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I love that you said like figuring out like the complexities of it because a lot of times we try to simplify things down to something that is easier to take and easier to understand.
Hmm.
And I think that can kind of relate back to what you were saying about um, like what we see in the media. And a common problem for people with neurodiversity is people who are neurodiverse. People who are neurodiverse
I know we need to
is
come up
yeah,
with what we refer to us as.
yeah. A common problem for people who are neurodiverse. So there's quite a few people talking about like how because we're kind of naive and want to try to do what's right in relationships and stuff, a lot of times we'll follow things off of media.
100%.
Yeah. Um,
Like
so like I had saved one that we were talking about up cues on whether people were interested or not. And so the first 18 months of a relationship was difficult because I was trying to do as I've read and seen in movies while he was trying to mask harder than usual until he eventually gave up and broke up with me. Um, I remember asking him to stop stimming because I was always told not to do it, or thinking that he was mad at me because he hadn't spoken to me for an hour. And all of that was kind of off of what they've seen in media because people don't stim in media. People don't, take extra time in media. Like,
yeah,
arguments are closed in the moment
totally.
um and yeah, you kind of like suppress all those other parts to look like a relationship
Yeah.
should. There's a lot of air quotes happening that you can't see. Should.
Typical, expected,
Typical.
societal expectations.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder, I'm gonna be a little not meta. Actually, I don't even know what the fucking word meta means.
Meta. We are in our 30s. We do not
We're
know what
so
meta
cool.
means, but
Um, I I talked about this a few years ago, but um, so I'm an SLP and I've learned a lot about Gestalt language
Mm,
processing, which is a way of acquiring language that a lot of autistic individuals kind of fall into in terms of research, in terms of like doing early intervention. It is a way of learning in which you hear a message and you associate the feeling that you're feeling with that message. So, for
mm,
example, if I'm a kid, I'm watching Bluey. I do that as an adult. And I am really enjoying the moment, or Bluey is doing something hilarious
mhm,
and says something like, it's the grannies or whatever. And so next time, if I'm talking with you and you say something that's funny,
mhm.
instead of me saying that's so funny, I would say, here come the grannies, and like playing that scene in my head and using the context within that situation.
Mm,
So, anyway, it's a way of learning that really is picking up on modeling and
mhm,
how other people are doing things and rehearsing them. And I think that we learn as neurodiverse people, I really do feel like I have learned from how other people are doing things. And I'm kind
Mhm.
of taking in all of that information and then performing it. But
Mhm.
I know it's authentic and it's me because it's the way I've processed the information and I'm taking it out.
Mhm.
But does that make any sense
Yeah.
in this context too, of like watching people have relationships? We grew up with Disney movies and romance and, till death do us part. And
Mhm.
like, I feel like I had that sense of relationship. And now I'm meeting way more people that have different types of relationships. And as an autistic person, it's like opened up my whole world in
Mhm.
terms of the possibilities. Whereas before I knew about those other types of relationships, I just didn't know about them and couldn't try them
Yeah.
on for myself. Does that
Yeah.
make,
I think that definitely applies very directly to especially the movies or
yeah,
social media type things and the relationships around you. But
yeah,
um, because I definitely find myself mostly in times of like challenge, like if I'm having like an argument or like we're trying to work through something, I definitely can see myself like picturing a scene from somewhere that
yeah,
applies to that
yes,
scene and then trying to like kind of be like, okay, well, how did they say that thing? And like you said, kind
yes,
of performing that.
yes,
Yeah. Mhm.
exactly. Do you feel like social media has helped you? Okay, yeah. Do you think that social media has helped you navigate relationships in terms of like either being on psychologist TikTok or
Mhm.
whatever?
Yeah, definitely. Especially with scripting, because
Yes.
I need scripts to help me when I'm emotional,
Yeah.
have appropriate responses.
Yeah.
And shout out to Therapy Jeff, you
We
may
love
be
you.
my BFF for relationship advice. Hopefully he's on Instagram because we're recording this January 19th.
We're mourning.
We're mourning. TikTok is gone for now. But hopefully he's on Instagram and stuff too. Anyways,
Hopefully.
I have learned a ton from psychology TikTok and yeah, getting some of those scripts to use during important moments and
Yeah.
yeah, saving those kind of things for later too. And
Hmm.
Lauren and I even used a couple of things from him that were
Yeah.
like lists of questions to ask before you move in together and stuff like that to help. Like
That.
I feel like I have a more difficult time thinking of what is necessary and important versus making that like instinctive decision for something.
Well,
Or
maybe it's because you are someone who needs that framework
Mhm.
and you can work really well within the boundaries, within the known boundaries, within the framework of having questions given to you.
Mhm.
And then, the creativity and the responses are from your brain, but you need grounding. I
Mhm.
think we all do, right?
Yeah. Something that I've had with relationships since I was young was falling hard and fast. Have you experienced
Wait,
that?
no.
No, you don't have to share anything, but
I will, but this is hilarious.
okay. So I wanted to read one about it because it definitely like summarizes some of what I have dealt with. This person's talking about getting on dating sites, and they said, I've always been like this, but as soon as I click with a person, I become so obsessed with them. Some may say like hyper fixated,
Yeah.
to the point that it consumes my whole being. It's
Hmm.
happened again now. I was speaking to a guy. We really bonded over literally a week, and now he's ghosted me out of the blue.
Oh,
It really is a mystery why it has happened.
oh
We were speaking for
no.
such a we were speaking for such a short time, and I know it's ridiculous, but I actually am finding it hard to accept. I don't know if it's because I romanticize the idea of him,
Yeah.
the sudden change has thrown me off, or abandonment
Good.
issues,
Yeah.
but it's genuinely hard to shift my mentality to not speaking to him again when things were going so well.
Yeah.
Um, and then the
Transition's hard.
first like popular comment says, "Yep, ever heard of the phenomenon limerence?
Limerence.
If not, look it up. It's like a very unfortunate marriage between ADHD hyperfocus and trauma attachment issues." Fun.
Fucking hilarious.
Yeah. So I looked up the definition of limerence.
Awesome.
So limerence means having an intense longing for another person, even when they don't fully reciprocate. So the limerent person struggles to think about anything else but their crush and neglects their social life, work, or other responsibilities as a result.
Yeah.
and this was talking about like a longer term thing too, of like it's called limerence, which was new to me. I hyperfixated on a guy back in middle school for 6 years. I spent 6 years obsessed with him and thinking we were going to get married and shit. It
Yep.
was insane. The guy could care less about me. I've love bombed many of my relationships early on, but now I've been engaged to a wonderful man, and we've been together since 2017. So I wish I had solid advice, but what I think started helping me in my later years in the hyperfixation phase, um, I would go to a previous hyperfixation and immerse myself in it. So I immersed
Oh,
myself in my
interesting.
singing, my special interest, and music, to kind of like cope with that hyperfixation feeling.
Interesting.
Yeah, which in poly we talk a lot about new relationship energy in
Hmm.
RE.
NRE.
Yep. So and NRE really can like completely screw up your other relationships because you just like lose your little brain
Yeah,
and get
totally.
so obsessed with a new person and
Yes,
then put aside like all your agreements and your communication and everything because you're just so excited.
totally.
So I love that idea of like coping through going back to something old
Yeah,
because you're still hyperfixating and like scratching that itch,
right,
but it's on something like healthier
right.
than the new person.
And it's like kind of working with yourself rather than against yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that.
fascinating. I
Yeah.
feel like limerence has been something that I see has been like a lifelong thing for me where yeah, that obsessive nature over another human and just wanting to like know everything about them and be with them at all times and like I imagine just like wanting to be in someone's skin, like wanting to know them that much. I think it's definitely a form of codependency and like not a healthy way of starting things out.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you ever felt like a limerence person
Yes.
or
Definitely. I'm definitely a serial long-term dater
yeah,
because I think I get so like into someone at first that I can't really see the like incompatibilities and stuff.
interesting. It's like
Yeah.
a blindness in
Yeah,
a
until
way.
later on when I kind of get out of that new
Yeah.
relationship energy, out of that hyperfixation, and then it becomes like a, oh, here's the factual things, like a year in, you
Oh,
know, and then kind of a change of
yeah.
pace there. Um, but it's interesting because another part of things that people with neurodivergence also get is that like naivety about people taking advantage.
Yeah.
And I feel like that those two things probably go hand in hand where you're like hyperfixated and super excited about someone and they see that and they can go, oh, they're obsessed with me. I can do whatever I want and they will just go along with it because they're obsessed with me. Like,
Yeah, and
mm,
then for for people that cannot see those signs, like that's really hard.
mhm.
It's got to come to terms with that.
Yeah, that's a really hard part about neurodiversity in general is that like we are easily taken advantage of,
Yeah.
and I definitely had that in high school, being put in
Yeah.
uncomfortable situations and yeah, not being able to trust what the person I was dating had intentions for, and
So shitty.
yeah, and I think that happens
Awful.
to a lot of people. So
Yeah.
that's one of the nice things about being a little older now and having a little more experience
Yeah.
and kind of knowing what to watch for and
Yeah. Well, I am actively dating right now, new people. So I feel like I'm in this like I could potentially be in limerence right now. Who's to say?
Ooh.
But I really do feel like I'm handling it with a lot more understanding of what limerence is. And I kind of, I've done a lot of research on how to kind of break that pattern and
Mm.
how to support yourself while you are dating someone new. And
Yeah.
I feel like, from the get-go, a ton of open communication
Mm.
and a lot of disclosing of like boundaries.
Mhm.
I would actually talk about like pre-first date and just like understanding what your boundaries are and then holding yourself to them and
Mhm.
also asking for that from that other person. Going really slow has really helped. And kind of that acknowledgement of, oh, I really, really, really want to see them. And I have my whole life outside of who this person is. And so,
Yeah. Maintaining my personal life and myself and everything while
yes,
being interested in someone new. Yeah.
yeah. And, I feel like the whole ADHD journey is an internal battle, like the whole. So even if I am like, oh, I really want to see this person, oh, I have to get back to like my real life, like it's an internal battle and
Yeah.
can get through it. It is okay. I'm the bravest soldier.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but
Um,
yeah, just being aware and also being aware of and respecting boundaries. I think
yeah.
that's huge.
I don't know about you, but like, especially with the world of online dating, I feel like pattern recognition comes in handy.
Oh, yeah.
This is just a really funny like parallel that I've drawn between them. I don't know if anyone else is obsessed with real estate, but like I love looking at house listings and stuff. It's
Love.
definitely a hyper focus for me. But I feel like reading a dating profile is very similar to reading like a house profile.
Yeah.
So like if you're reading a description about a house and you see has a lot of charm, antique character, and you're like, that means there's problems. That means it's old as hell. Like there's like these keywords that I connect, and I feel like it's the same thing reading a dating
Yeah.
profile. You may read something that's like, I've had a lot of different jobs, and you're like, what does that mean though?
Who
Like,
are you?
I can't think of other examples right now, but I feel like reading through, you can just like see the like, oh, that like simple sentence
Red
probably is a red
flag.
flag. Yeah.
I think that as an ADHD person, this is gonna sound really weird, but like sometimes I don't feel like I'm someone who has a lot of pattern recognition.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm someone who falls a little bit more into the naive spectrum and
Mm-hmm.
trusts people really easily. It's very interesting. I'm doing a curriculum right now with my students where it's all about navigating different levels of trust.
Ah.
And I literally feel like I have learned so much about social boundaries in the last like 3 months.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I really do have a blindness in terms of like, you start with yourself, like your
Mhm.
own circle. And that's, making your own decisions. No one can come in, test your boundaries, whatever.
Mhm.
And then the next circle out is like your really close friends. Next circle out is friends, whatever. You make
Yeah.
decisions about who is in
Mhm.
each circle, and then you talk about, what you talk with them about, how you touch, and then the levels of trust. And it's really hard for me to talk about trust um levels
Mhm.
because I feel like I am full trust
Yeah.
with everyone.
Just, yeah, like
Yeah.
take it at face value immediately and yeah.
Yeah. And really, yeah, like I believe everyone's good. And
Mhm.
I think through this last year, I think that my mind has shifted from people do try their best. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that I have to trust them.
Mhm.
And I get to kind of navigate that. And so I really do feel like I'm learning the different levels of trust. And so I am seeing how I'm navigating it very differently because I am taking things very slow. We're only seeing each other once a week, every couple weeks.
Mhm.
Um, we do have deeper conversations, but we have also a lot of light conversations. So we're just kind of figuring out like compatibility. And then also like we really are taking it slow with getting to know each other too, which
Which
in the past,
yeah,
oh, what were
probably
you gonna
probably
say?
helps like move from that outer like trust to like slowly build it into the middle instead of just jumping right into that middle trust of
It does.
yeah.
It really does. And it feels like there's some levels of safety being created. And anyway,
It was really interesting reading a lot of the like Reddits around relationships and autism because there are some people with neurodivergence who have decided that a relationship isn't like the thing for them, like that they
yeah,
just, and that's a totally valid decision if you're
yeah,
like, I enjoy my alone time too much, the
yeah,
stress of managing a relationship and like the feelings associated with that, especially with RSD.
yeah,
um yeah, it's totally like a fair valid decision that people can make, and if that's right for you, then
yeah,
that's what you choose.
exactly.
um
All about autonomy.
yeah. And just a lot of people also struggling with the like feeling like they're too hard to love was a big
Yeah.
theme. um and I think that's where kind of like taking it slow and getting into that like trust
Hmm.
point helps a lot, and like keeping people kind of
Yeah.
not at a distance but kind of at that protective zone until you feel like they understand you and can be welcomed into that space.
Totally.
I feel like if we bring people into our trust circle and then they reject us or say that, you shouldn't stim or you shouldn't do this or whatever, that hurts a lot more than somebody that's been on that outer edge and you're kind of like, okay, like, go away.
Totally. Well, and bringing it back to like knowing yourself and honoring who you are and understanding that like if someone's telling you not to stim as much or saying that like your stimming is uncomfortable, like that's ableism. It's who you are. Stimming is a part of ADHD, and I think asking someone to not show up as they are is a big toxic ask, to be honest.
And we have to recognize incompatibility.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that I've kind of like finally figured out for myself is like if they aren't comfortable with the way that you stim and stuff or are being ableist towards you, like maybe that's an incompatibility that they can't tolerate your being and you shouldn't change your being and your true self because of someone else.
Yeah. No, I definitely hear you. And I think I struggle with that too. Just like understanding that like incompatibility can be a multitude of things.
Yeah, not just the big things that we see in the movies.
Not just the big things.
Not just the big things.
So when you come into a relationship as an ADHD person, sometimes you carry trauma of being rejected, of not being taken for who you are and whatnot. And I think when you are an ADHD person navigating the world, the neurotypical world, right? And you're kind of being told that you're doing things wrong or that you don't fit in. I know for me, I feel like I am living this life where I don't have a manual of how to fucking do it. And it's really hard. And so when you enter in relationship with someone, I feel like all of those things kind of rise to the surface and you become really vulnerable. And I think as you get older, more of that is brought in to relationships. I think that the more that you're burned, the more vulnerable you need to be. And knowing yourself and knowing who you are, your strengths, and standing in your power is really the only way to move forward.
Yeah, which that ties perfectly into one of these that I saved that was kind of a cute story.
Yeah.
Is somebody that was commenting on one of the threads about being hard to love.
Yeah.
And they said they've had that in the past, but now they have a nice little love letter that I wrote to myself detailing everything I like about myself and my life. I read it every time someone's dusty sun is stressing me out. Many a douchebag has been blocked because of that letter.
That's so funny. That's really sweet.
Yeah. I think that's the same, like the reminder to yourself of like who I am and my strengths and like, yes, all these things are coming up for me in this relationship and like new things, but I still have this core of like who I am and what I love.
Totally.
It's so sweet.
It's really sweet. Love letters. We should write love letters to ourselves.
Yes. Something else that I wanted to talk about though was sex and neurodiversity.
I love sex so much.
We're sex positive here.
Mom, turn off the podcast.
Yeah, this is the point where relatives and some friends maybe want to leave.
Hilarious.
No, I'm not too in-depth on it. It is a really frequent occurrence that people with neurodivergence either are hypersexual or struggle with sexual things.
Yes.
And I personally feel like the combination sometimes makes it go both directions for me. Like,
tell me more. I said that really weird.
Tell me.
Tell me
more.
Tell me more.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know, like if I'm in like a good place or like an early relationship or that kind of thing, I feel like I can be hypersexual and be like really into it. And I love physical touch. Like that's one of the things that made me think I didn't have autism because I was like, but I love cuddling and touch and like all kinds of things.
Not like you thought it, you had the definition of it being sensory avoidant rather than sensory seeking.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And so those times are like that, but then if I get like even relatively stressed out or burnt out or overstimulated, any of those things can send me completely the opposite direction.
Yep.
And I've definitely had struggles a lot with like getting excited about things, finishing things, like that kind
Yeah.
of stuff as I get more distracted. And I
Uh-huh.
definitely have the problem of like thoughts popping in
Yes.
unbidden.
Yes.
Yeah. Mostly like, oh, I have to do this tomorrow. Stop. What are you doing? Stay in the moment, stay in the moment, stay in the moment.
Like, here we are, here we are, here we are.
Yeah.
I completely relate. The hypersexual, and then I guess would it be hyposexual?
Hyposexual. Yes, but nobody uses that term, I guess, which is weird.
We are starting it.
Yeah, hyposexual.
But I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Like, whether you are in a spot where, you know, I don't know. I don't know what it comes down to. I think that the not feeling sexual comes down to feeling overstimulated, maybe nervous system dysregulation. Like,
Mhm.
I know that when I am going through a stressful time, I I am not thinking about sex at
Yeah.
all. It's really weird, but um I don't know. This is something really good to think about.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it also depends a lot on like I've been learning lately about like sexual drive styles.
Mm.
More things I've learned on TikTok.
R.I.P.
RIP. Um, so like whether you are, is it responsive or a spontaneous desire?
Yeah.
And I think that I'm definitely more of the responsive desire where like you, like a lot of times I won't even think about
Right.
sex or interest or any of those things. Like it's not like I'm like craving it in my
Right.
downtime.
Right.
So it's very responsive. It's like, what is my partner doing? How is the response? How is the feeling in the room? Like
Yeah.
all kinds of things going into that.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's hard for your partners with spontaneous desire to understand
Yeah.
because they just maybe like walking around and be like, ooh, I want to do something like
Yes.
out of
Yeah.
nowhere.
Are those fluid? Those like approaches to sex, or are they pretty like fixed? Because I
I,
would say I could
yeah.
actually relate to both.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know in general like what they say can be done with it.
Yeah.
For me it's always responsive,
Got it.
but I'm
Yeah.
sure it can fluctuate.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because I would say I don't know if like hormones have anything to do with it.
Sure.
I'm sure. Well,
I'm
they
sure.
do. We know that they do, but I feel like when I am in a certain time of my cycle, like I
Hmm.
do think about sex more and want more connection, want more physical touch. And then there's parts of my cycle where I am not thinking about it as often, or I'm not thinking about it at all. But it's interesting because it's not like I feel like it's very rare that I don't want my body to be touched.
Hmm.
And maybe that's like an introspective, I don't know if that's the word, introreceptive, interoception.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's an interoception issue that I need to work towards and like
Hmm.
listen to my body's cues for not wanting to be touched, but I feel like I'm pretty sensory seeking in being touched.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a really interesting point that you bring up with around period times because for couples with two uterus having peoples
Yeah.
that is so different because
Yeah.
if you're synced things are
Yes.
different, if you're unsynced things
Yes.
are different.
Totally.
And like everybody's response to it is so different that it's like how do we match
Totally.
up these desires that change throughout the month?
Yeah, it's like magic when you guys can sync up for like one
Right.
fucking day a month.
Right.
But to
Real
your
problem with having a female roommate though, because it's really screwing up my thinking here.
no, but like to your point, this is so interesting because I don't know if this is too much information. When I'm on my period, I really love having sex. I'm
Hmm.
horny. I want to be touched.
Yeah.
It's actually a form of pain relief for me,
Oh, nice. Yeah.
oddly enough. Um,
No, endorphins. I mean,
endorphins,
is
all
that,
the
yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Endorphins make you happy.
Yep.
Happy
Yep.
people don't shoot their husbands.
Yes.
Um, but the person I'm dating, she also has she has a uterus, and she doesn't want to be touched on her period.
Oh, damn.
So it's totally fine. All
Oh,
of
yeah.
your bodies are
It'll all
okay.
work out. Yeah.
But
It's just unfortunate.
it's just interesting that people's response to their bodies are all different. So
Mhm.
really, it's just a dance of communication, a
Yeah.
dance of knowing yourself.
A dance of
Um,
fun times with things on your own, maybe?
I won't confirm or deny.
Yeah.
And just
Do I have the
bound
lesbian backpack? I sure do.
fuck. Yeah. Yes. But yeah, a dance in boundaries too, and
Mhm.
being able to stick up for yourself, know your limits. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think sex is really fun. Actually, I'm gonna like say this because it's like the weirdest thing, but I remember being in sex ed in middle school, and one of the first things that it's like a middle-aged man teaching us sex education. And he literally opens up his lecture saying, sex is great. Sex is good.
Yeah.
Plays in my head. That is like an echolalia thing that I wish could get the fuck out of
You got like
there.
a vine on repeat in your
It
head of this
is.
guy.
It's terrible.
Oh my gosh.
But I do love sex.
Yeah.
So
I mean, any sex ed is gonna be freaking weird.
it is. And what's really interesting is like that potentially could be a part of my job right now
Mhm.
because I'm working with young adults and, you know, a huge part of sex, as with any other part of life, is boundary setting, is knowing
Mhm.
what to say, is navigating the social situation. It's important to give language, give scripting, start to
Yeah.
support that journey.
Yeah, I forgot to save it, but there was a article I was reading that talks about how people with neurodiversity, especially autism, are less likely to be educated about sex at all.
Yeah.
Um, His parents already avoid that conversation
Yeah.
with their typically developing kiddos.
Yeah.
And then if you've got a kiddo that already has like communication difficulties, a lot of times also being infantilized, like they don't
Oh,
picture
it
us
bugs me so
having those
much. Yeah.
relationships. So of course, like you're not going to educate someone about it if they're never going to do that. Like,
Yeah.
whereas we can have completely even higher support needs if they are desiring of that, can
Mhm.
have completely normal adult relationships with sex, with everything
Yeah.
else. It
I
doesn't matter the level of support or
It
yeah.
doesn't. I actually have a really interesting story to share
Yeah.
that's like it really bothers me actually, but I'm
Mm.
supporting a student who uses AAC to communicate. And that means that they use a device that usually is like an iPad or a tablet of sorts. And then there are buttons on there that he can push to communicate his thoughts, ideas, wants, and needs. That's a goal.
Yeah.
But he has some buttons on there that are the teachers brought it up in our annual IEP meeting as inappropriate buttons. And to give context, the student is 20 years old.
Mm.
Um, and the buttons are like, I
Oh.
think it was white girl chest or something, but the picture, because there's pictures, symbols that go along with the buttons, were boobs.
Uh-huh.
Um, and we were in this IEP meeting. He was sitting right there, and the teachers brought it up as a point of wanting to remove this button from the iPad because it's not appropriate for school. And the mom agreed and started talking about how she um doesn't have like this kid doesn't have any access to internet at home for foreign purposes.
Mm.
And she didn't like say that as crassly as I just did.
We were hinting at it instead of directly, but
um, but it was one of those situations where I was sitting there and I was so angry because here is this person who is a young man who has thoughts, wants, needs, desires. And here are all of these people monitoring that and cutting off access to that. And I think perpetuating a stigma that it's wrong and bad.
Mhm.
And, family values are important. I understand. However, he's 20 years old, can make his own decisions. Um, And so, as someone who supports his communication, it put me in a really hard spot because,
Hmm.
his parents have guardianship over him. So at the end of the day, they make the final call of whether or not to remove this button. In the moment, I talked about how, this device is his voice, it is his communication. So taking off buttons and um there were some other parts of the meeting that were like he uses the device to stim and it's distracting and
Mm.
fucking hate it.
Ugh.
Anyway, it was so as an SLP in that situation, all I could do was just provide some advocacy points of this is his voice, this is how he communicates his autonomy, um, you know,
It's age
and
appropriate.
it's age
Like,
appropriate, yeah. And
ugh.
I was ignored, and that's fine because at the end of the day, his parents have guardianship over him. Um, but like I'm not going to take the device and remove the button. I'm just gonna
Yeah,
I
let
don't
them
know.
deal with it. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's really hard.
it is
I,
hard.
especially to be someone that can't speak for themselves in that way, or like has limited
Yeah.
ability to speak for themselves.
Well, but I think that the point is that this device speaks for him. Like that's his voice. So he
Mhm.
does have the ability and he's a student that uses typing and so
Mhm.
he'll come up with like all of these sentences and have conversation and yes, it's slower than speaking. However, it does have content and it's who he is and he's expressing that. And so
Yeah.
for it not to be taken seriously and um for it not to be respected is really hard.
Yeah.
But this is also a really good example of my black and white thinking where I get very rigid on what I think is right
Mhm.
and how I would do it and
Yeah.
kind of like justice oriented too, where, you know, it is supporting his autonomy, but it's not really working well within the system that he's in, within,
Yeah, let's take that context and to the black and white. Yeah, that is
so
really tough. Mm.
that's been, I think, haunting me for the last 2 weeks, that IEP meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. Um, some other things we're going to talk about is around like accommodations. Like in relationship for you, do you find anything that you need like accommodations around for you to have a successful relationship?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I do. Um,
Like for me especially, it's mostly around like energy
yeah,
and stuff like when running out of energy or being burnt out or those kind of things and like respecting that my like ability to relate to someone and be fully there is decreased and like having that accommodation of like, okay, this is what's happening right now.
yeah.
Your expectations come down for the moment, but know that later I want to go back. Like this isn't a permanent change kind of thing.
Got it. So like listening to your energy levels and then being able to like meet yourself in the moment and then come up with like a plan for later and
Yeah, with
when
my
you have more
partner
energy.
and
Yeah,
yeah, everybody being on
absolutely.
that same communication page of like this
Yeah.
is what I need right now, but I promise it's not forever. Like I still have you in my mind and like let's keep
Yeah.
going.
I love that. I'm learning what I need in
Mm.
relationship. I think that it changes from relationship to relationship,
Yeah.
but definitely having a pulse on my own energy and being able to advocate that for that. And also I think just being understood as an ADHD person is
Mm.
huge for me.
Yeah.
Not having to over explain myself or having normalization of stimming, having normalization of who I am, being messy.
Yeah.
Um, I think that I have a lot of internalized ableism towards myself. So, being able to understand the difference between kind of like what we were talking about earlier, but like excuse versus context, and
Mm.
like, am I allowed to show up messy because I am a messy human, or do I have to have all of my ducks in a row be perfect because of my autism? Like,
Yeah.
internal voice.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers the question.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like all part of like showing up with your partner and like making that communication aware of like this is where I am right now
Yeah.
versus like next week versus
Right.
last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something that I saw in past relationships was that I actually do struggle with spoken communication,
Mm, same.
especially, yeah.
Mm,
For you, is it during like elevated moments or dysregulated moments, I would say?
it can be, but almost my difficulty is more um like my tone and stuff and how
Yeah.
it comes off more
Yeah,
so than creating the words.
sure.
It's like I'll be able to say what I want to say, but it's going to come off very like brusque and short and
Mm-hmm.
like it's going to sound like that because I'm trying to keep like the logical
Mm-hmm.
train going.
Totally.
So I don't have the energy to also make it like, oh, like this happened and da, da, da. And so like instead
Yeah,
my tone will go more towards like this happened, this is what I wanted to come from it. Like I'm willing to
totally.
work on this. But it
Yeah.
comes off that like flat, toneless. Like,
Have your partners in the past given you that feedback, or is that coming from yourself? Like you know that you're communicating in that way, or has it like hurt feelings?
kind of both.
Okay.
In the past with people who are more sensitive
Yeah.
to especially tone and stuff like that from their past histories, it does come off that way. More like hurtful to them.
Yeah.
Um, because I feel like I'm not having empathy in those
Uh,
moments, even if what I'm saying is empathetic. And so like
yeah.
it helps to be with someone that's not triggered easily by that
Yeah.
because then I can still communicate and they just know like when you're in this time, that's what you're gonna sound like instead of taking that as extra um meaning behind it. Mm.
Well, yeah, it's basically accepting you unmasked or masked
Mm-hmm.
because monitoring your tone is a form of masking.
Yep.
So having the partners that are, able to take you as you are or need that mask on, so to say.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Yeah, I mean that I think that helps a lot in being able to communicate and
Yeah,
continue the communication because then it doesn't put up the walls of like putting up those walls and then not being able to continue the communication or
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. The other area that I need a lot of accommodations in is like in that sexual area. Like
Yeah.
I love touch and I'm usually sensory seeking, but if
Mhm.
I am even remotely like overstimulated, then like a touch that normally feels great is all of a sudden like jumpy. And like I
I
need
had
a lot of
that
like
happen too.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
the
fight or flight is just like
startle.
you're like
Yes.
mm-hmm.
It was really weird for me when that started happening.
Yeah.
Of just like, and I love that you connected it to ADHD because I also did, but it took a lot of time.
Mm.
But yeah, it's like it's a very jarring sensation.
Yeah, and it almost feels the same as like not wanting like that person. Like I don't know if you've ever been with somebody that you
Yeah.
were like, I'm not into this, like, maybe
Yeah.
a first date or something that you're like, you were just not it for
Not it.
me. Like
Not the
I struggle with it
vibe.
a lot because it feels kind of similar to that.
Yeah.
And so I had to figure out that like me having that response is not in relation to my partner at all.
No.
And like I try to communicate that to them too. Like this
Yes.
isn't you. There's nothing
Yes.
you did. It's that I need to accommodate myself. And in that, like I'm asking you to change what you're doing because
Yeah.
I need that difference
Yeah.
in my body. And that is really hard to separate.
It's
Mhm.
so fucking hard. The world is hard.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's when you are in like high level stress seasons that you might feel more startled, like that access to the fight or flight is a little bit shorter?
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel the same
definitely.
way. Yeah. I feel like I do have an accommodation that I did just think about, and it's actually energy related.
Oh.
So, because of all of my health issues
Mhm.
and chronic pain that who knows if it was the chicken or the egg, but as a person with ADHD, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is like a lot of chronic pain, hypermobility, yada, yada, yada. So sometimes I am super into having sex and super into, the plan, whatever, consent's given, all of that. And like halfway through, I just like, I'm done.
Mm.
I am just done. I don't think it's distracting. I think it's more of like my body feels so tired and just like immovable. It's really weird.
Yeah.
So that's something that is communicated with, and I feel like what I would like in the future is to have more accommodations in place beforehand of like
Mm.
maybe this is a night where we focus on this activity or this activity because there's like a whole spectrum of things you can do sexually.
Oh yeah.
And then
Mm.
also finding ways to accommodate yourself with like pillows or positions or whatnot. And that was something that I did not dive into in my last relationship and I would like to carry forward with me because
Mhm.
one of the things that was a breakdown was us having that mismatch of one person wanting to have sex and one person not
Oh
wanting
yeah.
to or feeling like an energy thing. And so I think I think it's important, as with everything, to be able to create access, and that's with accommodations. So you can
Mhm.
still have the sex, have the touch, but whether it's waiting or whether it's having other things in the room or different activities that you're doing, or, looking at sex differently where it's not about finishing, but it's about enjoying each other's company and like experiencing pleasure in different ways.
Yeah, that's huge, especially the not
Yeah,
being about just the end result and
which
being the enjoyment in the middle part. Yeah.
exactly. And I think as ADHD people, bringing it back to that beginning of what we've seen in movies and what we've seen in media and what we've read in books. I mean, it's all about the orgasm. And
Mhm.
like, don't get
And
me
that,
wrong, it's fucking fun,
yeah.
but like, it's not always about that. And when bodies are already having sensory overload or like, just put it, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just interesting.
Well, and taking that pressure off of the end result also takes off the demand of getting to the end result. Yeah. And then that makes
That's
it, yeah, then it makes
it.
it overall more enjoyable. And
Yeah.
it makes it okay for those stopping points to be like, I really enjoyed that. I think I'm good for the night. Let's go for you. Or like
Yeah.
I'm feeling totally done or whatever.
Hmm.
And I think that does make a huge challenge for people to have neurotypical, neurodiverse relationships together because neurotypical people just can't understand that
Yeah.
cutoff.
Yeah.
So not that it's not possible, but there's a lot more
Right.
work that's going to go into like understanding what's happening for the other person.
Totally.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sex is fun. We like
Sex
it.
is
Sex
great.
is
Sex is
great.
good.
Sex can be bad if you
The fucking worst.
yeah.
No, but that was a fun episode. Let's talk
Yeah.
about sex more.
Let's talk about sex more, yeah. I do in the future we're gonna have somebody on who is also polyamorous and
Mhm.
be able to talk a little bit more about like how polyamory relates to it too and ethical non-monogamy.
Yeah.
Um, because it's like very from what I could find on Reddit, it's very like black or white. Like people either are super for it and they're like totally get it, or like that sounds like an awful time. I'm not gonna do that. But I think for some people it works really well because it goes along with like our um not understanding or following social norms, kind of
Yeah.
rebuking the
Yep.
norm. Um, for me, I've like never really understood the point of like not the point of it, like never really understood the feeling so much of jealousy around having feelings for multiple people.
Yeah.
And so it's come kind of natural to me. But it's just interesting how different people respond so differently to that. Because a lot of people were saying like, oh my God, the amount of communication and like all this stuff sounds like a nightmare. And like
Yes. No, well, I don't think it sounds like a nightmare, but for me personally, I just like it sounds exhausting.
yeah.
Like I can barely take on one person, let alone
Yeah.
multiple. So, no, I'm super excited to hear more about it. And like I know that we've had a lot of talks too off podcast, but
Yeah.
it is a way of life that I think is super cool and just like, yeah, I love it. I can't wait to talk about it more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also ran across something in looking at Love Reddits that was book recommendations. So I'm
Yes.
gonna post in the comments or in the description some book recommendations. A couple of the top ones that people put in were one that's called All About Love by Bell Hooks.
Mm,
And then one that's really great for the sexuality portion of it is called Come As You Are
great
by
book.
Emily Nagoski.
Hmm.
Really good when I have it upstairs.
Me too.
Yeah. But there was a lot of good recommendations for like if you're someone who needs to understand things from an outside perspective first, or like
Yeah.
make sense of things like we were talking
Yes, the
about.
processing.
Yeah, these
Yeah.
are much more realistic places to go for that information than movies and shows and stuff like that, which we're not going to get to talking about love on the spectrum, but I've been told it's quite problematic,
I
and
was just gonna
yeah.
say, I don't know if we've talked about this off podcast, but I have a huge problem with that show.
Yeah, I've never
Yeah.
watched it in part
Yeah.
because I was like, I don't know like how I'm gonna feel about that,
I
but
know.
yeah.
I feel like it's a big infantilization issue. And it's a line between like what is the word that I want to say? I think that it's a line between representation and exploitation.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
definitely feel like that show leans way more on exploitation.
Yeah, like the
Anyway.
lack of representation of different levels of support. Because I've heard that it's like all people with high support needs, which is
Yeah,
great, but that is that exploitation part of like, oh, we want to see the people who have problems and have
I
things
know.
going on, and
I
it's so
know.
complicated. Like,
Yeah.
even if it is like a sweet outlook
Yeah.
on it, it's that's still that like we don't want to see people that look normal and are like doing it or like
Yeah, and like again goes along with the infantilization comment of like I felt like so many of the comments that I've seen is like, "Oh my gosh, they're so cute. It's so adorable." It
Mhm.
happens at my work site all the time. It pisses me off
And like
because
it's true for people with other disabilities
that's
too,
what I
like
was gonna
Down
say.
syndrome
Down with
and stuff.
Love is
Like,
another one of those shows, and it's the
mhm.
same thing where it's like profiting off of people with disabilities. And I really do wonder, this is a whole other soapbox I could get on, but the laws around paying people with disabilities and like I'll have to come up with like a different I'll have to come up with more research on this, but like I wonder if folks were getting paid appropriately and
Mhm.
fairly. Anyway,
Yeah.
whole thing.
Whole thing. So, anyways, we're not really going to get into that now more than we just did, but just know that that's out there and just take it with a grain of salt when you're watching it. And yeah. Did you want to do any astrology update?
Oh my God. Everything's in Pisces right now.
Everything's in Pisces.
Everything's in Pisces. So,
Was my thing in Pisces? Was that?
well, the current stars, the current stars.
Okay.
Oh, because we're going to talk about Venus signs
Yeah.
today. Okay. So, what are our Venus signs? Let's look this up. Yeah, let's look at co-star.
She loves the CoStar app.
We love it. Oh, I'm friends with you, so I can just read it off of here.
Wonderful.
Um, Let me see. Okay. So the way astrology, I don't know if we have to talk about this, but the way astrology is like where the stars were, the planets were at the time that you were born. And so it's a snapshot of the sky
Mhm.
the minute that you entered the world. So there's placements in all the different planets, there's houses, all of that. So the Venus planet, it's a planet. We all know it's like what, second from the sun? I should know this.
Oh gosh, don't ask. I'm sorry, Bill Nye. I can't
know.
remember. Which congrats on your what was that? He got a prize recently. Oh,
I
yeah,
don't know.
he got
Bill Nye, the science guy. Bill.
yeah, he got the presidential medal, like one of the medals recently. It
Oh,
was so cute. Anyways,
Bill
sorry, Bill Nye. I don't
Nye.
remember the planets. Venus.
Hilarious. Venus. Um, it is the planet that is how you love, how you connect with others, how you are in relation with others. They say it's the planet of feminine energy. So, anyway, these are so based on what your sign is kind of how you express all those different things. So, mine is in Capricorn, which is an earth sign. It is traditional, comfort based. Um, they say that it is one where you kind of get all your ducks in a row so that you can
Mm.
have comfort in your life. So, putting the effort in, putting the work in so that you can enjoy what you have.
Mm.
So putting those together, I I love really I don't want to say that. So putting those together, I love traditionally, but I put a lot of work into how I love and connect
Mm.
with other people. I do take it very seriously.
Yeah.
I actually have a Capricorn stellium in my chart, so the Capricorn energy of me, the stellium means that there's more than three planets, I think that it's in. Yeah, the sign is in three planets. So that energy kind of like takes over sometimes.
Mm.
So, love seriously, connect seriously. I think that femininity can be hard for me to access, honestly. At some points, I don't know. Gender
Yeah.
is weird. I'm having
Yeah.
like a weird gender time right now. Anyway, so your Venus is in Aries, which you are also an Aries sun.
Okay.
I think that you're actually an Aries stellium as well, if I remember correctly. Let me just look at your chart really quick. Yeah, you're an Aries stellium, which
So
is
I'm an
really
Aries.
Aries.
God.
You have it in your sun, Mercury, and Venus,
Wow.
which is really cool because having those similarities, I'm sure, makes you a great lover,
Yep.
like and communicator in love. But that's part of your essence and whatnot. Anyway,
Mhm. Aries
Aries is spontaneous, it's lively, it's fast, passionate. So
This month is looking great for me.
enthusiastic. So your love life and or connection, friendships just might be, based on fun and like liveliness
Mm.
and I don't know, do you resonate with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the love, that's the
Love
Venus.
it. Yeah.
But yeah,
Maybe that's
astrology is
something
really
that we could
fun.
do, like if somebody writes in a comment that they're like, "Oh, would you mind? Do mine. Here's my co-star." We
Here's
can have
my co-star.
little special side episodes for you guys.
Well, and it's just fun. I don't know. It's just fun to talk with people about.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing about Aries too is that it's very youthful energy.
Hmm.
And so I wonder if, you know, either love or friendships or connection with others, femininity kind
Hmm.
of helps you to like access that youthfulness or you like approach it in a youthful way.
Yeah.
But
I think that makes a lot of sense, especially because I'm like when I'm on my own, I'm a lot more like serious and like logical minded and like
mhm.
focusing on what needs to be done, that kind of thing. And when I'm with friends, it's much more like, I don't know, just like fun and we're doing things and I forget about like time and all the important things that have to be done
Yeah.
and kind of can go into that space of play a little bit more.
Oh, I love that. Like it's an access for your playfulness.
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
very cool.
Oh,
Anyway,
yay.
yeah.
Well, everybody enjoy your dates not in a restaurant with 5 TVs going or
Fluorescent
fluorescent
lighting.
lights.
Heinous.
Heinous. Pick some dates that work for you. Accommodate yourself.
Accommodate. Accommodate your date. Accommodate your date.
I like that. That was fun.
Thank you.
Anyways, enjoy your love and relationships or your relationship with yourself if you're someone who chooses not to have outside relationships.
Oh my God, yeah, let's do a self-love episode
Yes,
at some point.
Yes. Sorted. If you need to use what that other person said and write yourself a little love letter that keeps you on track of what you love about yourself.
Love that.
Yeah.
And until next, oh, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just saying beautiful things for this month and for the week of love.
The week of love.
The week of love. Yeah.
And until next time,
be unapologetically you.
and find your joy. Signing off.
Bye. That's the first time we got it right.
Hell! Yes! We did it!
We're learning things.
We're learning things.
Stay tuned for a kitty cameo.
There's a cat. Okay. There's a cat.
We'll see if he joins us.
Okay. We've got our podcast king, Queen King.
Queen King.
Hey.
I wanted to get him like looking straight at it. Oh, push it. Oh.
Are you just
That's
like,
not for rubbing, sir.
like,
Dance, dance, dance.